A few scraps of shredded meat, an empty tray. That is what the United States government is feeding the men and women defending this country in the middle of a war zone. Not a rumor, not an exaggeration. A photograph, leaked by a sailor's own mother, because her child was too afraid to speak publicly, showing the meal served aboard one of the most powerful warships ever built by human hands. The USS Abraham Lincoln, a Nimitz-class nuclear aircraft carrier, 100,000 tons of American steel, carrying 5,000 sailors, 90 combat aircraft, and enough firepower to level a small nation, and the people operating that machine. The young men and women who left their families, signed their names on a dotted line, and sailed into a shooting war against Iran, are eating a tortilla and some shredded meat off an empty tray for lunch. Let that image sit with you for a moment, because this is not a story about food. This is a story about what America actually thinks of the people it sends to fight its wars. It started in April 2026, when USA Today published 2 photographs that were sent by deployed service members to their parents back home. One image came from a sailor aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, showing carrots, a hamburger patty, and what the reporter described as a gray slab of processed meat sitting on a half-empty tray. The other came from a Marine aboard the USS Tripoli. A tortilla and some shredded meat on an otherwise completely bare lunch tray. These were not photographs from a field exercise. These were not images from a training deployment in calm waters. These photographs were taken aboard warships actively deployed to the Middle East, supporting Operation Epic Fury, conducting live combat operations against Iran in the most dangerous naval theater on the planet right now. The sailor on the Abraham Lincoln told his mother in March 2026 that the crew eats when they can, that they divide up food evenly when one person gets more than another, that he expected supplies to get worse, that morale was already falling. His mother did not go to Congress. She did not file a complaint. She went to a newspaper, because that was the only option she had left to try to make someone care about her child. When a mother has to call a journalist to make sure her son gets fed, something has gone catastrophically wrong. Not logistically wrong. Not administratively wrong. Morally wrong. These parents were not troublemakers. They were not activists. They were ordinary American families. The kind that put yellow ribbon magnets on their cars and stand at ceremonies with tears in their eyes when the ship leaves port. And they were terrified. Terrified that their children, thousands of miles away in a war zone, surrounded by Iranian missiles and IRGC speedboats, and a closed strait and a blockade that could escalate into full combat at any moment, were not getting enough to eat. The mother of the sailor on the Abraham Lincoln told USA Today that her son had warned her weeks earlier that food was becoming scarce, that the crew was sharing portions, that packages from home, the care boxes that military families have been sending to deployed sailors for generations, the cookies and the protein bars and the letters and the small pieces of normalcy that remind a 20-year-old kid in the middle of the ocean that someone at home is thinking about him, were not arriving, because the Navy had quietly imposed a temporary ban on mail deliveries to certain military zip codes. Nobody announced it publicly. Nobody told the families. The packages just stopped arriving. And when USA Today published the photographs and the story broke nationally, the response from Washington was not sympathy. It was not accountability. It was not a promise to fix the problem immediately. It was denial. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, went on record on April 17, 2026, stating that both the USS Tripoli and the USS Abraham Lincoln had more than 30 days of food supplies on board. 30 days. The Navy's official account posted on social media that reports of food shortages were false, that both ships had sufficient food to serve their crews with healthy options, that every crew member was receiving fully portioned, nutritionally balanced meals. Fully portioned, nutritionally balanced. Those are the words the United States government used to describe a gray slab of processed meat and a tortilla. The Navy spokesperson declined to comment beyond the official statement. Nobody from the Pentagon sat down with those mothers. Nobody called them. Nobody acknowledged that their children had reached out to them, not to complain, not to cause trouble, but because they were hungry and scared, and the only person they trusted to help them was their mom. The official position of the most powerful military institution in the history of human civilization was simple and brutal. Nothing to see here. Move along. Here is what the Pentagon's denial doesn't explain. The USS Abraham Lincoln arrived in the Middle East in late January 2026. That is nearly 3 months of continuous deployment in one of the most operationally intense naval environments on the planet, according to DVIDS, the Department of Defense's own official media service. The last time the Navy resupplied the Abraham Lincoln was March 18, 2026, over a month before the food photographs leaked, over a month of combat operations, sustained flight operations, round-the-clock maintenance, 5,000 sailors burning thousands of calories every single day, and one resupply in over 30 days. The Navy will tell you that warships can be resupplied at sea, that fleet replenishment oilers can transfer food, fuel, and ammunition from ship to ship while both vessels are underway. That is true. It is also true that the Strait of Hormuz has been closed since February 28th, that Iran has attacked and seized commercial vessels in the Gulf of Oman, that the entire logistics chain supporting U.S. naval operations in the Persian Gulf has been operating under wartime conditions, disrupted, stressed, and in some cases physically interdicted by Iranian forces. The supply chain that feeds 5,000 sailors on an aircraft carrier does not run on military pride and official statements. It runs on ships and trucks and ports and coordination, and every single one of those things has been under direct threat since the day the war started. And then there is the mail ban. While the Pentagon was denying food shortages, it was simultaneously maintaining a ban on mail deliveries to military zip codes in the Middle East. Families across America had spent weeks and months putting together care packages. Food, hygiene products, personal items, the small essentials that make a long deployment survivable. And those packages were sitting in post offices and sorting facilities, going nowhere. The Navy eventually lifted the ban on April 17th. The same day, Hegseth made his statement about 30 days of food supplies. But the timing of that announcement tells its own story. They didn't lift the mail ban because the situation had improved. They lifted it because a national newspaper had published photographs of sailors' meals, and the story had gone viral, and the optics of maintaining a mail ban while denying food shortages had become politically untenable. Meanwhile, the sailors on the Abraham Lincoln kept flying missions, kept standing watch, kept maintaining aircraft and operating weapons systems, and doing every single thing the United States Navy asked them to do. In a war zone on reduced rations, without mail from home, while their government told the world that everything was fine. There is a contract between a nation and the people it asks to fight its wars. It is not written down anywhere. It is not part of any legislation or any military code. But every person who has ever worn a uniform understands it instinctively. And so does every family member who has ever watched someone they love sail away on a warship. The contract is simple. You go, you serve. You put yourself in harm's way. You follow orders. You do your job no matter how dangerous, no matter how far from home, no matter how long the deployment lasts. And in return, in absolute minimum return, your country makes sure you are fed. That is not a luxury. That is not an expectation beyond what any reasonable person should demand. That is the floor. The absolute baseline of what a government owes the people it sends to fight. The sailors on the USS Abraham Lincoln did not break that contract. They showed up. They deployed into a shooting war. They flew combat missions over Iran. They stood watch in waters patrolled by IRGC fast attack boats and Iranian drones and mines that can sink a destroyer. They did not complain publicly. They did not leak the photographs themselves. They told their mothers, quietly, privately, the way young people in impossible situations have always told their mothers, that things were hard and getting harder, and their mothers did what mothers do. They tried to help. And the response from the most powerful military establishment on earth was a press release denying everything. This is not a partisan story. This is not about politics or policy or which party controls the White House. This is about 5,000 Americans in a war zone who were not getting enough to eat while their government held press conferences about 30 days of food supplies and nutritionally balanced meals. It is about a mail ban that cut off the only lifeline connecting those sailors to their families. It is about a defense establishment that found it easier to deny a problem than to fix it, and easier to issue a statement than to pick up the phone and call the mother of a hungry sailor. The men and women on the USS Abraham Lincoln will keep serving. They will keep flying. They will keep fighting. Because that is who they are, and that is what they signed up to do. But they deserve better than a gray slab of processed meat on a half-empty tray. They deserve better than silence when their families ask questions. They deserve better than a government that treats the denial of their hunger as an acceptable public relations strategy in the middle of a war. If this story made you angry, it should. If it made you feel something, good.